How has four-wheel drive evolved over the years? Well, what we have today is our cheap $12,000 100 Series Land Cruiser up against a brand new $70,000 250 Series Land Cruiser, and let's find out on the TFL slip test and in our off-road course exactly what's changed over the past 20 years. Welcome to the TFL slip test. Now what we're going to do is get these vehicles stuck on purpose in our rollers to see how the four-wheel drive systems react and the 8-track systems react to get us unstuck. And then we're going to take both this old and the new Land Cruiser out into our off-road test course to see what that means in terms of real-world performance. Now this first test is the rear wheel slip test. And basically we're going to see how much slipping it takes for the front wheels to start engaging and moving us off these rollers. So center diff unlocked right now, in neutral, vehicle settled into drive. I'm going to let off the brake and on to the accelerator. A little bit of slip. You can see the traction control light is blinking in the old one, and then we pulled down. So took a little bit of effort for the rear brakes to grab to force wheel speed to the front end, but let's go ahead and try it one more time. And this time I'm going to go ahead and turn the center differential lock on, and now we should be able to drive straight off the rollers. Let's see. Yep. So we know the center diff lock is working. That locks both front and rear drive shafts together at the same speed. Pulled us right down. The new one has a feature that, from my research, the old one doesn't have. You see, these are both full-time four-wheel drive systems, but the new one uses a Torsen limited slip center differential. So where the old one relied on traction control to distribute power and torque, the new one should be able to do it using mechanical diffs. Let's see if that's true. So we're in the rollers in neutral just like the old one. Let the vehicle settle into drive. Center diff unlocked. Let's see what happens. Come on, Torsen. Well, that's actually much worse than the old one. I am now full throttle. Wheels are spinning, but we're not getting unstuck at all. Now, this slip test may not show the benefits of a Torsen diff, and that's what I've read a lot of you smart commenters say, but even still, you would expect it to do something, or at least have traction control do something, but we are fully stuck here, even at full throttle. So let's go ahead and engage the center differential lock. All right, just clicked on, pulled us right down. Pretty interesting right there. So next up, we have the diagonal slip test. So this is going to be left front, right rear stuck in the rollers. Now this is a really interesting test because this is what we're going to experience out in our trenches course. It's very common in the snow. Imagine you're driving up on a snowy curb. It's really common off-road. We're going to run this test with the center differential already locked, and then we'll see how the traction control works to get us unstuck. Now, this old Land Cruiser doesn't have a rear locking diff. The very early 100 series did, at least here in the US, and then they moved to a system called A-Track, which stands for Advanced Traction Control. The 100 series was the first vehicle to get A-Track, and we're going to see how it's evolved from the old one to the new one. So in neutral, high range, center diff locked, into drive, onto the gas. So we got some spinning going on. Traction control is blinking, but pretty good result. So took a little bit of effort from the computer to figure out what was happening, but ultimately it did pull us off the rollers. Hopefully it's redemption time for the 250 series, because it didn't do as well as the 100 in the first test. But now for the diagonal slip test, the left front and the right rear in the rollers. Just like the 100, I'm leaving that center diff locked for this test. Okay, in a neutral, letting the vehicle settle into drive and onto the gas. Oh yeah, great result. Very quick to respond, very little slip. Car came right off. Good result. That's where those modern computers and wheel speed sensors start coming into play. So we're stepping it up a notch. We're getting more extreme with the first 3-wheel slip test. So all wheels except the right rear are stuck in the rollers. Now, because this is extreme, I'm going to engage low range on this 100 series Land Cruiser. Now, low range doesn't necessarily add more traction. It may put some stability controls and traction controls into a more advanced setting, as I believe it does in this vehicle, but what it does do is multiply the torque and put less strain on things. So that's how we're going to go into low range. So low range engaged in the 100 series into drive. Let's see if this old system can figure it out. Okay, yeah, not bad. So I started adding a little bit of throttle. You could hear and feel the wheels spinning, and then ultimately it did pull us off using just 8-track. Very cool. All right, so now things get a little interesting because just like the 100 series, for the 3-wheel test, I'm going into low range. It's done with a little switch versus a lever. And now I have a huge number of tools at my disposal. So I've got something called multi-terrain select, which the old one doesn't have, and that puts the throttle programming, the traction control programming into various different modes depending on the condition. So here, if I go into drive, let me see my options. I've got rock, mud, sand, and auto. Now I think we'll start out in auto, see how that operates, and then we can try rock mode too here in a sec. So this is the auto setting. Onto the gas. I mean, look, like 3 wheels stuck. Pulled us right off, even in the automatic setting. Let's go ahead and try the rock setting. That's how fast these new Toyotas are to respond. Rock, that'll be the most aggressive mode. You have and drive. And this again is rear diff unlocked. This is all just the truck. I mean, it's unbelievable how well that works. And that's before we pull out all the tricks, because this Land Cruiser, unlike the old one, I should say, unlike our old one, some of the 100 series had rear diff locks, but ours has a standard rear differential lock. Now, of course, that's going to blink at me a little bit. Let me get settled in the rollers. And then now watch what happens with that rear diff lock into drive. No slip at all. So, lots of different tools that can help you really dial your rig into exactly the terrain that you're going to be going to, which is something you can do in the new one, which you can't necessarily do in the old one. The final slip test is only the right front on the ground. This is by far the hardest for the vast majority of vehicles. Let's see if the old Cruiser can do it. So, low range, center diff locked. We're pulling out all the tools we have. Into drive, onto the accelerator. Wheels are spinning. Come on, figure it out, traction control. There you go, it did it. So it took quite a bit of spinning, and then ultimately you heard that chirp of the right front as it got that torque and pulled us off. But listen folks, it's an old system, it's 20 years old, but it'll still outshine a lot of modern day systems. This 100 series is very impressive. All right, final test is front wheel. Only one on the ground. Still in low range, still have center diff locked. Rear diff lock is off, but doesn't matter because the rear wheel are both stuck. So we're gonna start out in the, we're going for it, baby. We're going right to the rock setting, and then we can also try crawl control. So multi-terrain select, straight into rock. Let's see what happens. Up the brake, onto the throttle. It's like we weren't even stuck. These new systems are so fast to respond. I mean, it's almost unbelievable. I know that lockers are amazing pieces of technology, and there's nothing better than a triple locked vehicle, but these new Toyotas come close. So let's try the crawl control into drive. We'll go into the second fastest speed. Now, crawl control is kind of off-road cruise control, which means you don't have to touch the gas at all, but it's a little bit more advanced than that because it also monitors wheel speeds very, very closely and tries to maintain a set speed, so it really can do some pretty awesome stuff. So, into drive, crawl control active, low range, center locker, rock mode. This is all she got, baby. Off of the brake, onto the gas. Okay. Now listen, maybe a little bit slower than what I was doing with my foot, just because the computer had to, you know, start moving. But, other than the first test, which has always been pretty poor in these new Land Cruisers, that's the second time I've run one of these through where it struggled with the easiest test. As the tests get harder, it just does so well, right? So, my suggestion with this is, when you're going off-road the new Land Cruiser, turn on that center diff lock before you need it, and then don't turn on that rear diff lock until you absolutely need it, because you can go so many places with just the advanced traction control in these new Toyotas, and clearly in the old ones as well. All right, let's stop messing around on simulated tests. Let's go into some dirt and see what happens. Welcome to the Onyx Off-Road Andre's Pit Course. This is our standardized tests that we run these four-wheel drive systems through to see how they perform in a real-world scenario. And we're going to go down the logs in this 100 series just to see how comfortable the ride is, and then up the trenches course. Now, this 100 series has 241,931 miles, and it is tight as a drum. It's unbelievable how well these interiors and just the sheer lack of rattles have held up over the past 20 years. These really are well-made vehicles, except the front diffs, which apparently are notoriously weak, as I found out last time I took this 100 series off-road. So hopefully I don't do that again on our trenches course as we start lifting up tires. So what I'm gonna do is put this thing in all the cool off-road settings. We're in high range right now. I'm gonna go through neutral into low, and then let's go ahead and lock up the center. So we're gonna start lifting up the right front tire, but we were able to maintain enough traction to keep that steady forward momentum. Now we're gonna do left front tire, right rear tire. There goes that A-track system. You can hear it, the brake pump engage. Just taking it nice and slow. I'm really impressed with the amount of control we're seeing out of this 100 series, considering this is a 20-year-old system. Wow, that's really, really impressive. I'm just taking it as slow as I can, and you can see all these years later, all these miles later, it sounds a little clunky, but it works brilliantly. It's a good system, folks. There's nothing else to it. One of the interesting things about these two cruisers, this is technically a Prado, which everyone loves to point out is the light-duty Land Cruiser. And they do drive a little bit different. I find that these Prados are much more nimble, and kind of more enjoyable to drive off-road than the full-blown cruisers. But the weight difference is pretty marginal between these two. I think that one's around 5,680 and this one's about 5,700 pounds. So within spitting distance of each other in terms of weight. Let's see how the ride quality is going down our logs course here. Oh, the old one's comfier. I think maybe it's because it's got some blown chocks in it, but this is definitely a little bit firmer down our logs avenue. But the visibility is much better. I love the stupid big windows in these new Land Cruisers. They're so easy to see out of. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to put this Land Cruiser in the exact same mode I had the old one in. So we're going to go low range, center diff locked, okay? And I'm not going to do anything else. We're just going to do that. So low range, center diff locked, there we go, into drive. And I'm just going to see, not engaging any special modes, nothing like that. Let's see how the vehicle performs compared to the old one. So first transition, just like the old one, we were able to keep traction. Second transition, take it real slow. We're losing traction. And there you go. You can see we're two-wheeling, and it's performing just as well, but a lot quieter. So we're still picking up tires just like we were in the 100 series, but in the 250, it's doing largely the same thing, but it's doing it without making a sound, which is very cool. So that was awesome. That was a great result. But boy, do we have some toys in this new Land Cruiser. So let's go ahead and try it again. Let's start pushing some modes, engaging some buttons here. So what I'm going to do this second time around, I'm going to leave it at 4 low. I'm going to use the crawl control system, and I might even use the rear diff lock. Or might just go full attack mode in this thing and show you what that looks like compared to just crawl control. Now, typically this trenches course presents a pretty big challenge to a lot of crossovers and SUVs, but the capability of these cruisers is so high that it really takes more than this to really challenge them. So here we go. Let's go into neutral. I guess we don't have to go to neutral. We can do rear locker in drive. Rear locker is flashing at me. Come on. Are you working? Nope. always the challenge with some of these newer Toyota products, is getting the rear lockers to engage in the first place. So let's go into crawl control here. We're going to set it in the second of the 5 settings. And then what I'm going to do, take my foot off the brake completely. There we go. Rear locker is on now. And we're just going to let the vehicle do all the work for us. So that's foot completely off the brake. It's holding steady at about half a mile an hour. There's that first transition. But you can see with that rear locker engaged, there's no wheel spin whatsoever. The computer doesn't need to figure out where the wheel position is, essentially, to activate the brakes, because with the rear locker on, they're both spinning at the same speeds. But it is so smooth. Look at that. Beautiful. The front end is still working a little bit to distribute torque, but with that rear locked up, absolutely no drama. And listen, that crawl control is a really nice feature. Even if you are a fairly experienced off-roader, if you really want to focus precisely on line placement, it's really hard to beat crawl control. It's just very good at figuring out the traction side of things and letting you do the steering and the line placement. So even though some people do poo-poo, it's like I'm better than crawl control. In some instances, I do find it to be quite useful. Well, there you have it, a really interesting result. That old system works well, but the new 250 series, the improvements are down to the speed at which it reacts and wheel control. It's so hard to beat what Toyota has done with their new 8-track system, multi-terrain select, and crawl control. It's very impressive. Let me know what you guys think in the comments section below. As always, it's been Tommy, behind the camera, my dad today. Thanks to him for helping out, and we'll see you in the next video.